Managing. Okay. Just cool. I don't know what that means. Hello. Are we live or are we live? I think we're live. Okay. Cool. Hi, everybody. It's almost 12 o'clock. I'll wait for a few more minutes until we give everybody an opportunity to join us. And in the meantime, welcome to the first ever quadruple effect. This is going to be a fun journey. I think this is what we need right now. I just had a real strong intuition from spirit about this, and I take those seriously and I listen to them. The voice with no voice. And the voice with no voice was saying to me a couple weeks ago that we need a very, easy, bright, happy way to explore our truth and what's really real and what we value most. Not the news and not those kind of things that tend to kind of bring us into a place of fear and uncertainty and, even hopelessness. We don't want that. We need to be hopeful. And I think there's lots to be hopeful about. It just takes our ability to tap into our center and to turn away and unplug, if you will, a little bit from the noise of the crowd and the mass consciousness, which right now is not very conducive to well-being. So that's why we're here. So we're going to start off with a little bit of yoga. And I'd love you to get just if you're in a chair right now, that's actually perfect. If you're standing, that's okay too. You can do this either way. So we'll be going from a nice, strong standing position into what's called the mountain pose or Tadasana. And before we do that, we're going to just do a little bit of a breath. And so this is going to be 10 minutes of your yoga. And the breath is called the Ujjayi breath. And I know Pamela Roberts on her channel, she talks about this breath a little bit, maybe from a different kind of vernacular. And oh my goodness, I started before 12, which is very unlike me. I'm usually late. I have a very ADHD type of character, and I can often be doing too many things at once. In any case, that's why I do these practices, these 4 practices, religiously every day. And that's the only time you'll ever hear me use the word religious, unless it's um, to help us understand something more important, which is our spirit. In any case, let's start off with a little bit of breathing. Ujjayi breath is really a whole body breath. We're bringing breath deep into the abdomen, and we're allowing that breath to fill out the full belly, and then the mid chest and the upper chest, much like the yogic breath. But this breath is a bit different because we're constricting a little bit the back of the throat. And the way we're going to do that to learn it is to imagine sucking the breath through a straw, just like you were trying to suck a thick milkshake, literally. And so the first point of this breath and the first way you'll experience it is doing just that. So we'll go and I'm going to encourage you to think about when you go on the inhale, you imagine just bringing in life force energy from the crown of your head and down into your sort of lungs and then lower belly. And when you exhale, pursed lips, you're going to imagine releasing and letting go of all the tension, letting go of the material world for a while and just keeping it out there at arm's length. So we'll go 3 times. Good. And I'm sure you can hear my breath. If not, I hope you can hear yours. And the last couple ones we'll do with the out the lips and the inhale. So we're going to use the nose, the main vehicle for breathing, and we'll go inhaling through the nose and exhale out the mouth. And this time you can really imagine on your inhale expansion And on your exhale, this deep relaxation and grounding. Together, inhale. That's it. One more. Empty the belly out completely. Good. Okay, so now we're going to move with that. And this particular pose is called the mountain pose, as I mentioned, and or Tadasana and Utthita Tadasana. And Tadasana starts off with us standing or sitting in a very balanced place, spine tall as you can make it, the neck long with the chin kind of pulled in like a drawer in towards the back of the head. The navel also can pull in toward the spine, but the rib cage lifts up and off of the pelvis, and the front armpits smile, and the back armpits droop down. And we're just going to feel in our breath now the expansion on the inhale, and on the exhale, the release and the relaxing of your shoulders. Oh, yeah. And you can even add a little bit of tipping the neck to get or the ear toward the shoulder to get the neck released as well. Inhaling and exhaling, using that same breath, that very beautiful Ujjayi breath. And I'm just going to make sure that I'm not losing sight of our time. So today we'll be doing 10 minutes each, and we're going to do a little bit more. Now we're going to add arms into this. So inhale and turn your palms up and bring your arms all the way up as far as they will go, and stretch through the fingertips if you're able. Now, I'm not able because I actually don't have hand function as a quad, but I can do this much, and you can do as much as you want. And also, you could go to here if that's better for you or more accessible to you. You could even just imagine lifting the arms up if that's not available to you. But otherwise, let's bring them up, keep that strong, and then exhale, turn the palms out, and exhale and bring them down. And let's try that again, coordinated. Inhale, arms up, palms facing the ceiling. Exhale, push the hands out toward the walls opposite you, and relax the shoulders and the arms down. And a couple more. Inhale, up, and if you want, you can just look up, but don't tip your head. Just take your eyes up into your third eye and exhale, coming back down. We're going to do that one more time. Inhale all the way up. Beautiful. Oh, I love it. Shoulders relaxed down the back body, armpits wide and happy. And exhale, release. Beautiful. And now we're going to move into the 6 movements of the spine, which is where I really love to start with yoga, because we have this beautiful spine that really is the life of your body. And we have this breath prana that brings life force in. And so be able to put those two together is really what yoga is mostly all about. There's lots more to it than that. But for now, we're just going to stick with that. So we're going to move into the 6 movements of the spine. Now, the spine, as you know, is really what keeps the column of our body upright. And when you have the curves to the spine, that's ideal. So the spine has 4 curves, but 2 are repeating, or 2 pairs of 4 curves. So there we go, the quadruple effect again. In any case, right at the neck, you have what's called a lordotic curve. So it curves kind of backwards toward the wall behind me, toward the Buddha behind me, and that's the same at the lumbar spine, at the lower body. So that's why we have a little bit of a sway in our lower back. And then at the chest, we have a kyphotic curve. And so that's where the spine bulges backwards. So it goes convex, concave, concave, convex, concave, convex. So the sacrum would be the one that bulges backwards. So those 4 curves are really important to remember that we have. First of all, they're the arches of our body, and like Leonardo da Vinci figured out, that's how we get stability. And so, in other words, if you are sitting up and you've got a little bit of a small curve at your lower back, that's actually ideal. If you don't have too much of a curve at the upper back, that's even better. So you bring your chest and your collarbones out a little bit and you create that kyphotic curve on the mid chest. So those curves, we're going to go into a little bit more in depth here. So to get those curves, we help the spine by going to flexion. So flexing is bringing the roundness into the back of the neck. So here we're just imagining that the chin can reach the chest, but more importantly, that the chest is actually pulling up toward the chin. So that'll bring the spine into a beautiful kyphotic curve at the neck area where it doesn't normally do kyphotic. And that's flexion. And then extension could simply be taking a look up, and you'll feel the back of the neck moving forward in toward the body. You'll probably feel the rest of your spine just stabilizing you, and then do that again. Come and bow into flexion and look up into extension. And you could add the arms in there and get a really beautiful open chest and a little mini back bend, which is super good for if you're working all day at a computer. Good. So that's the first movement of flexion and extension, those first two pairs. And they work together, obviously, in opposites. And then we have lateral flexion. So let's bring the left ear toward the left shoulder. Oh, and just breathe here and allow that to release over on the opposite side, the right side. And then switch sides. Right ear toward the right shoulder, and I'm really stiff there. Whew. Good. And then come back to neutral. And then we have twisting. So twisting, we're going to inhale, lean a little bit towards your right leg and brace yourself with your right hand under your right knee, and then twist and look over your right shoulder. So your left arm is down between your legs or on the outside of the right knee. Your right hand is behind you. And if you're standing, you might want to sit in a chair. Easier to feel the twist. Good, and then we'll switch sides. So now my right hand is going to go over across my lap and grab my left knee, and I get a bit of a reaction there in the way of a spasm, which is what happens in a spinal cord injured body like mine, but it still loves to do yoga. And coming back to your midline. So that's our yoga for today. We're going to end by just bringing our hands all the way back up on the inhale, bringing the palms together, and then coming right down the center spine axis, right down to your heart and connecting to your heart. And now we're going to move into self-care. So the self-care part of the practice, I really want to feel in my own being every day that I'm treating myself the same way I would treat my best friend, my baby or my child, or even a little child that was, kind of a 2-year old and not really quite sure about what it was, doing or where the next best thing for it might be. And in that sense, we are our own best friends, ideally. And self care is really about doing that, being so compassionate to ourselves that we take time for self care. And so, what is self care? And I know a lot of people, and it's kind of one of the buzzwords around lately. And there's a lot of ambiguity, I think, around self care because it shouldn't be a list of things to do. Oh, I've got to do this, that, and the other thing to, do my self care practice. Actually, it's quite the opposite. Self care means what does this feel like to me that is enhancing rather than detracting? And what is it that I could do that could be affirming and generative? And when I use the word generative, I use that a lot in coaching too. But it's really that it builds on itself and it builds on the good will that you sort of generate through that practice. And so for self-care for today, we're just going to kind of lay out the groundwork really. And essentially, self-care really covers four areas. So they're the areas of self-care that we're going to be focusing on are the physical body, which is pretty obvious. We really need to take care of our physical body. And when we don't, we suffer. We suffer health-wise. And one of the biggest um, detriments to your health, honestly, and your well-being is stress. And there can be good stress. And generally, if we're good at our self care, that good stress, like a lot of work or making a lot of money or, having a lot of clients, is generative. It's helping you to, be more and more empowered. But if it isn't, then it needs to be reassessed. And so, good stress can be like bad stress, like bad news or something where boom, and all of a sudden feels really heavy in the body and the effect is actually kind of heavy in the body. So our physical self-care is, generally pretty obvious. We want to always remember to drink lots of water, um, to get a good rest and a good night's sleep. We want to remember to eat well, to exercise daily, and to practice these practices of mindfulness and yoga, and self care and whatever else really makes you feel good. Like going and having fun with your daughters. That's what makes me feel good. Something, that brings joy and fulfillment. So those are the ways that I like to look at self-care, especially on the physical level. Now, on the emotional level, self-care really needs to be, I think, brought into the concept that there's a difference between so if we're talking about just our emotional self-care, there's a difference, but well, included in that is feelings, is what I should say. So, emotional self care involves your emotions and it also involves your feelings, and they are actually quite different. So, feeling is what you're going to feel in your body. So, let's just take the example of anger. So, if I'm doing emotional self care and I know that I get really angry when my dog barks at the imaginary thing that's moving in the room. And if I know that I get angry at that, then I should be able to ameliorate that or to defer it or to diffuse it or reframe it. But if I don't, I keep that anger feeling in my body of frustration and kind of overwhelm or just, annoyance. And that starts to harbor in the tissue. And now that emotion has a story attached to it. So now the feeling becomes the emotion, which is anger or annoyance, and then that feeling, that emotion, actually, energy and motion, starts to then develop into a story. Oh, the dog always does this when I do that. Oh, I did a little. Oh, I'm gonna have to do. Now, if you saw the person that walked into the room and thought your dog was so cute, they might feel, a little bit annoyed at the barking, but they would have a different reaction probably. They might not make a story around it at all, and their feeling would dissipate quite quickly because it's like, "Oh, yeah, whatever. It's a dog. Dogs do that." So, I hope that was clear enough to understand, first of all, the difference between emotions and feelings. And the really important piece of this is that we need to feel that feeling, that sensory body, because that's also honoring the body in a way of self care. And then we need to ameliorate the emotion. So we might need to do some reframing. We might need to do a little bit of checks and balances in terms of, am I overreacting? Or, what is that really all about? Am I angry at something else? So there's the kind of pieces of emotional self-care that we'll unpack as we go along in this course. Obviously, I'm not going to answer it one, session at a time, but we're going to do this all the time every Wednesday. So I hope you come back and learn more about that. Um, the sense of the emotional self-care, I'll just touch on this before we move to the spiritual area of our being. And regarding self-care, it's about practice, honestly, and it's also, about really giving that the brain the opportunity not to create the emotional story around something by dealing with it in the moment. So staying really present with what you're feeling, and then this, allowing yourself to navigate through that state with no residual, just clean and clear. That brings us to the spiritual aspect of our beings, which is really our next segment that we're going to look at for the next 10 minutes. And that's a beautiful area that I find quite refreshing. But before we go to the spiritual area in practice, the next part of emotional or of self care in general is the spiritual, and that I take care of through ritual. I take care of it through practice. And people often get kind of wigged out by the word spiritual. And I say to them, well, actually, you need to think of spiritual as the word spiritual, spirit, you in reality. So, spiritual is the spirit of you in reality, spirituality. And if we think about something as simple as a wild horse, or even just a horse that's out in the field running and looking incredibly spirited, or we think about, a team that we really love and we go, wow, they've got a great spirit. Um, or we could think about, you know, um, something that's really dear to us, and we just go, I can't believe how good that makes me feel. And it's got nothing to do with the physical part of it, but there's an energy to it. And so spirituality is really when we take something that's non-physical and we connect it to something that's physical, and we either manifest it into matter, which we've done with our own being. We've taken a beautiful soul seed and we've brought it into this physical body, and now we're spirit and reality. And spirituality, of course, has gotten a bad rap because a lot of us associate spirituality with religion or with religiosity. And in fact, we know that's not the same thing. Religion is a construct designed by humans, by man particularly, especially back in the day when they really wanted to control various aspects of our spirit. And so religion was derived and constructed in such a way that that would be um, a very seamless transition for them to make from the pagan era and the time when we were much more connected to the source and to all of the different vibrations in the universe than we are now. And so that's spirituality. And to do spiritual self care, honestly, it's a lot about really trusting that inner voice, especially the voice that doesn't have a voice. So listening in, taking time for meditation, taking time to do reflection, self reflection. Um, a gratitude practice is, I find a really spiritual practice for me. It allows me to connect into the things that come to me from source that I had nothing to do with, but they are, gifted and bestowed onto me with great gratitude. And then we'll talk a little bit about how to develop prayer, a prayer practice. And so again, prayer is not something that needs to be religion, or it doesn't even need to be begging. Um, I think prayer, honestly, is really the idea that we are energy, and that where energy, where thought goes, energy flows. And so prayer is about intention. It's about setting the course for your being, which is really important, especially nowadays when there's so many voices in real life in real time coming at us, and the ones that we may allow in that we don't even know are. And it really is a way for us to be able to tap into the truth. So that's what I would say about spirituality. The next area in self care is the area of our brain, our mental health. And mental health, as we all know right now, especially, and since COVID, is really high on the list of priority, first of all. It's clear that we have a massive mental health dilemma, I think, culturally, socially, and globally. And I believe it's a lot to do with these practices not happening on a daily basis. And it also has a lot to do with the noise, the confusion, the uncertainty, and the constant bombardment of trauma onto the mental landscape. And so we need to understand the nature of the mind. And that's where we're going to go with this 1 hour on Wednesdays and really unpack from the yogic perspective and the Buddhist perspective the nature of the mind, because there is, like every organ in our body, and like everything in nature, there's a propensity to certain things in everything that is matter, and it has kind of a trajectory of energy that it follows, and also that it kind of is a rhythmic too. And so with the mind, we need to kind of think about the mind, as I said just a moment ago, that where thought goes, energy flows. And so the clearer and the less crowded and the more intentional, pure, love based, um, not negative, but positive thinking we can do, the better health our mind is going to have. The mind, and the brain are particularly binary, so they function as a binary unit. Everything is zeros and ones. This is, contrast and compare. That's the nature of the brain. We have two hemispheres, the right and left. We have a corpus colostrum in the middle that attaches in the yogic tradition and yogic view to the third eye. That center brain is also very connected to the heart. And so the faculties of the mind are incredible, as we all know. And the function of the mind is it's very straightforward. It's binary. And so in order to understand the mind, we have to go non-binary, and so we have to elicit the both hemispheres of the brain so that we can really allow for the fullness of our being to be massaged into the place of truth, the place where we see, oh, I'm not my mind only. I'm not my thoughts. I can identify my thoughts, but I don't necessarily have to identify with them. And that's the real key takeaway, if you will, for in terms of a self hack for mental well being. That's really really important to remember. I can observe my thinking in mindfulness and in meditation, but I can recognize that, oh, I'm I'm just observing thought. So if I'm observing thought, what is it that's observing? And that is the essential self, and that's where we connect into the heart and the soul and the essence of our being, that is, this very ephemeral, very non-binary, very energetic part of our being that's connected to source in a very different way. And so that's the area of mental self-care that I think is really important to talk about, in just a very sort of introductory way today. This is quite a big topic, so we wouldn't get into it in a lot of depth each week, but we'll definitely touch on it each time, and allow ourselves to really get more and more versed in the nature of the mind, so that we can then go to our meditation practice or our mindfulness practice with that much more awareness and understanding. Take a big breath. Yes. So that's going to wrap up the section on self care. The next section is a section on coaching. And for coaching, I just want to talk a little bit about what I do when I coach. And once this gets rolling a little bit and people want to come on and maybe ask a question in the live feed or put a comment down there, I will field those comments and take your comments or your questions. You can kind of like ask me anything about what we talked about, not about weird personal stuff, because I don't want to get into too much detail with coaching. But coaching is an incredible tool, and the reason why I love it so much is it's actually non-binary, non-binary as well. Coaching really draws on all the faculties of your being, and it looks at you as a whole being. So unlike some therapies that maybe kind of think that you have to, heal the trauma wound from the childhood thing, which may be important to do, don't get me wrong. But maybe you've already done that and it's time to move on. And coaching is really about moving on and about, taking the wisdom that you've garnered through your lessons, through your own learning, and really harvesting that now into this beautiful seeds that you can put into the garden and start to plant that beautiful kind of dream or the beautiful way that you would love to be in the world, the career, the partner, whatever it might be. And so in coaching, I think one of the big tenets that we really want to um, remember is that you are already whole, and that's like true for yoga too. Like we follow that same understanding in the yoga tradition that actually everybody's already whole, and all we're doing in any of these practices is kind of taking away what's covered up that wholeness or what's blocking it from fulfilling and expanding into its full self. And that's essentially the job of a coach. And as such, the beauty of coaching is very neutral. There's no right or wrong. There's really just a way for us to continue um, to bring as much of your own truth forward, of your own wisdom forward, and provide you with the container, a really safe container that you can explore those ideas with a coach who can give you um, feedback, who can, um, offer some reframe if it's needed, who can summarize some of those ideas and help you to find a way through sometimes what could be a quagmire. And so the role and the job of the coach is to listen intently to you and to give as little sort of input until it's at such time that it's like, oh, okay, if this a little bit of clarity here might help, or oh, this little bit of reflection would offer, a doorway for this person to see a little bit further around, or this might just offer a doorway, this comment. And really, it's about opening those doors or even, presenting the doorways so that the people that you're working with can safely and in a very holistic way walk through that door with that new awareness. And so I love that in terms of the coaching model. And I'm just aware of our time, and we have 10 minutes left. And I'm hoping to take us through a little bit of a mindfulness practice today because that's always really helpful, and it's certainly needed at this time. And I know that that's always loved by many people. So I have a little quote to read to you before as we kind of wind down out of coaching and move in toward the mindfulness practice. And this is a quote by a poet, David White. And I'm loving his Three Sundays. If you ever feel inclined to listen to one of the best poets, I think, who's not just a poet, he's a mystic, he's a philosopher, he's a scientist, and he's just really rich and wonderful to sit with. And he's offering these great Three Sundays in various different months. Anyways, this is a quote from him, and it will be a way for us to, I think, set up the context for today's mindfulness practice. Is nostalgia a feeling for some innocence that we have lost, or is innocence lost if we aren't occasioned at times to be nostalgic and fully accepting of all parts of ourselves moving through the journey of life, past, present, and future? And oh, it's just such a great thing to think about. Maybe I'll read it again as we go into the practice. But I want to just pull out that one statement at the very end there. Um, is innocence lost if we aren't occasioned at times to be nostalgic and fully accepting of all parts of ourselves moving through the journey of life, past, present, and future? And this is key because often in mindfulness, we talk about, oh, the present moment is the only thing that really counts, and we should all be focusing on the present. And then people can even feel a little bit, like a failure at meditation and at mindfulness if their mind wanders, because that's not being in the present moment, is it? But in fact, if we're able to use that context that I mentioned in the nature of the mind segment in self care, and if we're able to observe our thoughts, we can watch that process as the observer, as the witness, which is the ideal in mindfulness or meditation. And we can begin to have a bit of an arm's length with it. So it's over here, and I'm aware of it, but I'm not it. And and that really brings this idea that mindfulness is just about the now into a bit of a different place. And the danger of mindfulness, I think, that's been kind of, I guess, oh, I don't want to say it, but it's being monetized right now as this, fix all for everything. And it's being taught in ways that kind of give this idea that the body's, somehow not important. And the past might be, really bad, and the future, don't do that. And yet I say, actually, you need to feel where you are at. This is the most important thing. And the sensory body tells us that immediately. The body doesn't lie. The body never lies. Politicians lie, and a lot of other people lie, but the body doesn't. It tells the truth. It says, I'm tired, I'm thirsty, I'm stiff, I'm sore. It tells you, I'm angry, I'm, worried, whatever's going on, the body's right there with it. So if we listen to the sensory body and we give the sensory body the opportunity to be heard, which is tapping into the present moment, we might go, oh, I'm really, sitting around in this dwelling about something in the past. Oh, I'm observing that. Oh, okay, I don't need to go there. Or, oh, I'm racing in my day because I'm really caught up in this idea to the future. That's where the body brings us into the present moment. So it's observing those thoughts. We're not reprimanding ourselves for thinking past, present, or future, because the mind is always thinking. You can't stop that. That's its job. And it's thank God it does that job because, back in the day, 10,000 years ago, we had to be worried about the future saber-tooth tiger down the trail, or we had to remember where we put our bones and stuff. But we've got a different world now, and we don't really have to be as vigilant in terms of that anymore. So we can allow our mind to rest. And with all of the other complications of modern life, and including the collective trauma that's going on all the time, and even more so right now, we need to take the mind out of that job to relieve it of the burden of that continued barrage of information. And so that's what mindfulness is. That's what meditation is. And that's why they're so crucial. So we're going to go there right now because we only got 4 minutes left. So take a moment, shrug the shoulders up to the ears, and then push the upper arm bones back. And then allow the arms and the shoulders to drape down the back. And do that again. Inhale up. Exhale, push the upper arm bones back. Let the head rest in a neutral position and come into a quiet, comfortable, and stable position. Wherever that might be for you and whatever you might be doing, we're not going to make any noise. We're just going to allow ourselves to come into this place of rest. And so when I say we're not making any noise right now. Just be aware of the noise. Be aware of all the voices, all of the stuff going on in the mind. And if you can, even, give a name to them or give a color to them. Be observant of them without being attached to them or fixating on them. And then we're going to allow ourselves to move in a bit deeper by noticing your breath. And as you notice your breath, I'm going to invite you to allow yourself to feel in your sensory body all of your different sensations. So ideally, you're going to feel the breath moving in through the nose, back across the back of the throat, down into the chest, ideally into the belly, expanding the belly and the chest, and then exhaling, emptying the belly, then the chest, and the soft shoulders, and breathing out. And again, repeating that, inhaling, expanding, and exhale, releasing, and taking a moment to just pause before you go and inhale again. And that inhale brings you into a place of aliveness where you notice all your feelings and sensations, where you can observe them as the witness, just like we're the banks of a river. So imagine that you're the banks holding all of these sensations, holding all of the movement of the mind, all the thoughts, all the to-do lists, all of the, voices that aren't yours, and letting them be observed in this place of holding the banks of the river like a container. And as the river of thoughts and sensations and feelings and emotions flow through, you can be the banks holding steady, grounded in the depth of Mother Earth, and safe and solid and grounded in this place that you can call home. And then remembering where you are in space, and even remembering the shape of your body before just bowing your head towards your chest, bringing your heart up towards your chin, and relaxing the jaw, relaxing the back of the eyes, softening the space between the brows. And then when you're ready, on your next inhale, opening your eyes if they were closed and coming back into our shared space. So that's our 40-minute practice, and that's the quadruple effect that we'll do every week here on my YouTube channel. And I look forward to seeing you. Please subscribe and get your notifications so you don't forget. And I thank you all for your kind support and for your presence. And have a wonderful day. And I'm going to say goodbye now. That's always a little hard for me to do. Say goodbye. All right. Okay. Thanks, everybody.